All right, Rabbi, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Tammuz, Haba Alinu L'Tova, Daniel and Batsheva Pava of Hashmonaim Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all of Shimon Roshos in commemoration of their father, Reb Shlomo ben Yehuda Aryeh, Vegh of Philadelphia, on the occasion of his first Yahrzeit. Reb Shlomo was a child survivor of Aushwitz, a muvhak of Reb Michel Ber Weismendel. He left 90 plus descendants who are yireh Shamaim. May his neshama have an aliya. And of course, we dedicate our learning in the schus of the return of our hostages, b'shalom and b'karov, and the success of our soldiers. B'chol masei demo. Thank you so much. I forgot about that. Thank you. With that, let us begin. So a lot to do today. Baruch Hashem, some really incredible Gemara ahead of us. Today's daf is Chav Beis. Apologize for my voice, a little bit of congestion. All is good. I think some allergies. So we are picking up. So today's Chav Beis 22. We are picking up. Thank you. We are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Chav Aleph from Beis 21b Tanoihi, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 14 lines up from the bottom. So just remember again, we left off in the middle of what is really a fascinating machlokes, really about competition. And halacha l'maisa, how much is competition allowed versus at what point in time is competition curtailed? Now, the truth is, this, as one could imagine, halachically is a very involved situation and requires, again, a lot of in-depth. So there's a lot of halacha l'maisa that we're not necessarily going to get into today, but again, just to kind of frame the issue a little bit. The Gemara says, Tanayi, listen to this. Disanya. Kolfin b'nei mavuos ze'ezeh, shalahoshiv b'neihem lo chayis v'lo borski v'lo malami tinokos. So let's listen to this. The members of a mavui could go ahead and literally restrict one another, that they can't be another tailor, another tanner, another teacher. Supposed to listen to this. Essentially, the halacha is as follows: the members of a mavui could restrict someone else from outside the mavui from coming in and setting up shop for an occupation that is already being done by one of the bnei mavui. So, for example, let's say all of us live in one mavui, and let's say again one of us is the tailor, and one of us is the tanner, and one of us is the Rabbi. And then what happens? Someone from outside the mavui wants to come in and open up a tailor shop. So again, the first opinion says that halacha l'maisa, Tanakama says that halacha l'maisa, we could restrict someone from the outside from coming in and setting up shop in our mavui, providing a service that one of us is already providing. However, but your neighbor, you can't restrict. So in other words, if within the mavui itself, Ruvain is a tailor, and then Shimon decides, to try his hand at tailorship, right? So then halacha l'maisa, then what within the same mavui, so ultimately, again, you can't restrict someone else from doing business. Again, someone from outside the mavui comes in, the bnei mavui can say, listen, you can't come in and open up shop in our mavui. But within the mavui itself, no one mavui member could restrict another, even from opening up a competing business. That's the Tanakama. Reb Shlomo says, no, af l'shcheino kofeu. Reb Shlomo says, not true. Not true. You're even allowed to go ahead and restrict your neighbor. So in other words, Reuven can say, listen, I already opened up a tailor shop over here. Shimon, I'm sorry, there's no room for two tailors in one mavui. I was here first, you can't open up. So I'll say, so this is our machlokes tanoim. Tanakama versus Shimon Gamliel. Tanakama is saying neighbors can never restrict each other. In other words, as members of a mavui, each of us have a right to operate a business. And neither of us could go ahead and restrict the other. What we can restrict is outside competition. I can restrict someone from outside of our mavui opening shop here in the mavui. Shmuel says, not true. Once there's an established business in the mavui, so you can even restrict another member of the mavui from opening up a competing business. So we'll say, by the way, what's fascinating about, let's see, I'm Rav Huna read Rav Yeshua. Pshitali, so it's obvious to me that bar masa achrisi matzi ma'akev. You're supposed to listen to this. So Rav Huna Ber Weismendel says like this: it seems obvious to me that a member of a city can restrict a person who lives in another city from opening up a competing business, right? So, for example, let's say I live in Baltimore, and Reuven lives in Silver Springs, right? So what happens? I just had to get that in, right? Silver Springs, too early. Okay, got it. Right, so the Maisa again. So now now Reuven wants to go ahead and open up a business here in Baltimore, so I can restrict that. I don't know, when I say I can restrict it, I can object to that, and the halacha is going to side with me. This is my city, so to speak. In other words, I live in this city, and again, Reuven doesn't live in this city, so I have a right to make my livelihood in this city, and Reuven, who doesn't live here, doesn't have the right to impede on that. However, if Reuven pays what we'll call it local taxes, right? Reuven pays local taxes, then Reuven is, in other words, we'll say, essentially, you're considered to be a resident of any place where you pay taxes. That's the bottom line. So even if Reuven, technically speaking, lives in another community, but he pays taxes in Baltimore, then halacha l'maaseh he's a member of Baltimore, and therefore again he could open up a business here. So this is Rav Yeshua saying it's obvious to me that halacha l'maaseh, someone who doesn't live here can't open up a competing business with me. If he pays taxes over your local taxes, then he can open up a competing business. Similarly, again, if you have two people who live in the same mavoi, so neither could restrict the other from opening a business. So, what about people who live in two different mavois but the same city? In other words, let's say Reuven lives in Mavoi A, Shimon lives in Mavoi B. They both live in the same city. One of them wants to open up a business in the Mavoi of the other. Is that permitted? So I'll say, so in one hand, they live in the same city, but they live in different mavos. What's the halacha over there? Teku. Ultimately, again, it's a teku. So we'll say, what you see, again, and like I said, these halachas that we call also the halachas of hasagas gvul. Hasagas gvul, essentially, again, we'll call it income encroachment, right? Or parnasa encroachment, or business encroachment, competition. So what you see is something really fascinating. On one hand, the halacha recognizes that competition is very healthy, and actually competition is ridiculously beneficial to the consumer. Right? Otherwise, it's a monopoly. When there's a monopoly, again, it's the consumer who loses out. So competition is good. On the other hand, so on one hand, the halacha wants to go ahead and allow for healthy competition. On the other hand, the halacha also wants to look out and try to maintain and preserve the business interests of every yid. So it's this interesting balance between how do we allow for open and fair markets, healthy competition, benefit the consumer, and at the same time look out for the benefit, or look out for the financial needs of the individual. Very interesting. So we'll say another interesting halacha. So Amar Rav Yosef umoti Rav Huna b'mikri dardiki d'lamatzi ma'akir. Rav Yosef says that even Rav Huna agrees. Even Rav Huna, who takes a little bit more of a restrictive view of competition, he will agree with Rebbeim d'lamatzi ma'akev. That ultimately, again, if somebody is a Rabbi and he's teaching children, and someone else wants to open up a competing cheder in the same competing yeshiva in the same neighborhood, that neither party could restrict the other. The Amar Mar, so also because we learned about this already. Ezra Tikkun and the Yisrael Moshiv and Sofer, Bitzad Sofer, V'neichosh Doma Asur Yashuli Amalei, top of Chav Beis, Kinas Sofrim Tarbe Chochma. So we'll say it's very interesting. In the one area where everyone agrees that we want constant and ongoing competition, it's where? Chinuch. Isn't that fascinating? Chinuch. Right? In the education of our children, we want competition. Why? Kinas Sofrim, literally jealousy amongst teachers, Tarbe Chachma, will increase or will amplify, will cause the proliferation of wisdom. Again, I will say, competition is good. Competition makes people better. Competition makes people think, how could I deliver a superior service or a better product to the end user? And who benefits from that? The end user. The end user. This is competition. This is capitalism. This is good. This is what makes, again, I will say, the benefit is always the end user. So it's interesting that even those who go ahead and maybe have a little bit more of a restrictive view in the realm of competition by business will agree when it comes to education, no restrictions. Fascinating, right? When it comes to chinuch, we want it to be an open playing field. We want there to be constant competition, and we want, again, why? Because we want the most superior educational product. It's so fascinating. Okay, let's go weiter. We'll say 22a, first line. Omod Rav Huna Ber Yeshua, and Rav Huna Ber Yeshua agrees in the following case. So we'll say again, remember, Rav Huna Ber Yeshua is one who has a more restrictive view, ultimately again, of competition, and specifically, remember again, what he holds is like this, is if I live in Baltimore, and someone else doesn't live in Baltimore, so the person from out of town can't open up a business here in competition with me. That's Rav Huna's primary premise. Again, not that I have a monopoly here, but Lamaisa, there should be first opportunity to make parnasa in a city by people who live here. People who are coming from out of town, again, should not have first dibs on parnasa. So listen to this. But even Rav Huna Ber Yeshua agrees in the following case: Baruch lena machzirim ba'yaros. Traveling perfume salesmen, or traveling spice salesmen, perfumers. Traveling perfumers ultimately again are permitted to come in from out of town even to sell their wares. Why? That even so let's say again I live in Baltimore and I'm a perfumer. It's always good to have a plan B, right? And I'm a perfumer. So again, now there are guys from out of town coming and selling their perfumes. I can't stop them. Why not? This is incredible. Ezra Tikin and Lisa, Shirochlin Machzirin Ba'ayaros. Ezra was mitaking that perfumers would travel around, right, hacking their wares. Kedei sheyehe tachshitin mitsuyin libnos Yisrael. It's incredible. Once again, we want perfume to be able to be available to women. Right? We want Jewish women to have access to perfume. So therefore, again, what's the best way to do that? Make sure that it's an open marketplace. So even Rav Huna, who holds of a normally, we'll call it more restricted view of competition, will agree that when it comes to traveling perfume salesmen, anyone could come in. Open, what's the word? Open market. Okay, open playing field, right? In other words, that Allah anyone could come in and anyone could sell, and no one could restrict the other, even if I'm in town and those other guys are from out of town. Why? Once again, it's a benefit to the end user. In this case, it's interesting. Ezra is metakein, ultimately, again, that women should have access to perfume. We'll say, understand why was Ezra stepping in that women should have perfume? So remember again, this was a din in Shalom Bayis. Remember again, we'll say perfume played a much more pivotal role historically, especially when people didn't necessarily bathe every single day, right? So I might say again, perfume played a very important role, especially in Shalom Bayis. So therefore, again, Ezra made sure that women would have access to perfume. Incredible. It also tells you something amazing. You say to yourself, Ezra, this is Ezra. Ezra's got a lot on his shoulders, and Ezra is worried about legislating that women should have access to perfume. The answer is yes. You know what leadership means? Leadership means being involved with the everyday, even small needs of regular people. Leadership doesn't mean living in an ivory tower, only getting involved, in the major issues of major communal or national import, but it means even having a sensitivity to the day-to-day smaller issues, to the Shalom Bayis, ultimately, again, of your constituents. It's incredible. David HaMelech, the first thing when he became king, right, the first thing he did is he made sure to go ahead and preside over interpersonal disputes. David HaMelech understood that the power of a leader is not, again, just to look at the panoramic issues, but also to have a hand in resolving and helping the day-to-day man with day-to-day issues. So incredible. Let's go back there. Says in La Dure. So I'll say, by the way, even with the perfumers, they have a right to what? They have a right to go ahead and travel around. Aval la'akbuye lo. But what they don't have the right to do ultimately is what? Open up a storefront. So in other words, what Ezra allowed for was the perfumers, you could come in and be a traveling salesman. You can't go ahead and open up a storefront. Because again, now obviously, circling back, if you start paying local taxes, then you're a member of the municipality, then you could open up a storefront. But assuming you're living out of town, you're just a traveling salesman, you could travel through for perfume, but you can't open up a perfume store. So this is incredible. However, let's say the perfumer is a talmid chacham. Then he could open up a storefront. What we're going to see now is there was a certain preferential, we'll call it, there are certain business advantages given to Torah scholars. Now, the logic behind that is that we want Torah scholars to be able to make a parnasa, but we also want them to be able to make a parnasa in a way that still allows them to focus on their growth in Torah. So therefore, there are certain, again, like you have like the same way like today, like right, you have parsonage, right? You have certain tax benefits, certain business benefits, right? That could go ahead and come to clergy. So again, even in terms of the Gemara, there are certain benefits. So for example, as much as we just said before that if traveling perfume salesman could come through, you could travel through, but you can't set up a storefront. But again, if the person's a Talmid Chacham, we let them set up a storefront. The Gemara says, "Ki had Rava shar luhu Rabbi Yoshia Rav Ovadia lakbuye velo kehilchasa." Rabbi said this is as Rava allowed Rav Yoshia and Rav Ovadia, who were apparently traveling perfumers, to go ahead and set up a storefront. Now, velo kehilchasa means not in accordance with halacha. And Rabbi said what that means is not in accordance with halacha. Rashi points out over lifnim mishuras hadin, to go above and beyond. This is a special dispensation, ultimately again for Talmidei Chacham. Rabbi say it also shows you something incredibly beautiful, which is these are great Talmidei Chachamim also who have occupations. And this is also a very important yisod, that sometimes we think that excellence in Torah and earning a living are mutually exclusive things. They're not. Obviously, I will say in life in general, all of us would love to be able to focus on one thing and one thing only. That would be the best. I'd love to have, right? One area of focus is what I have to do and nothing else. Life doesn't work that way, right? We all have multiple areas of foci, right? We all have multiple things that we have to be able to do. And it's important to understand that having to focus on multiple things at once doesn't necessarily mean you can't be excellent on multiple things. So to me, it's just always fascinating here about saying, and I want to point out over here, right? These great Rabbanim, it's not like they're doctors or lawyers, or even Rebbeim. What are they? They're traveling salesmen. It's so interesting, right? They're traveling salesmen. But you see from here, I will say that there is the opportunity in life, if you're willing to work extra hard, to be excellent in the area of material growth and also in the area of spirituality. Incredible. So the Gemara says, "My time, what's the reason for this? Because they are Rabbanim, but because they are Talmidei Chachamim, we want them to be able to earn a parnasa without it coming at the total expense of their growth in learning. Their Torah, because remember again, I will say, the Torah of Talmidei Chachamim helps the world. It helps the world just because of the energy of Talmud Torah, and it helps the world because ultimately, hopefully, these people are providing leadership, Torah leadership as well. So therefore, as a community, we have an obligation to try to help them in the continued growth of their Torah. So if that means giving them a little bit of a business advantage, then Rabbi say to yourself, I was thinking about this yesterday, so that's very nice. So you're helping out Talmidei Chachamim. But Rabbi say, what does that also do? So you're helping out Talmidei Chachamim, so what happens? It sounds like, but you're putting other people at a disadvantage, right? That's always nice when I want to help out everyone. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to allow the Talmidei Chachamim to set up, who are traveling perfumers, and we'll see other examples of this, to set up a storefront, even though you don't allow anyone else. But doesn't that put the local people at a disadvantage? And I will say, what do you see from here? You see from here that I will say that helping the growth of Torah doesn't put anyone at a disadvantage. At the end of the day, helping the Talmidei Chachamim earn their parnasa. Again, helping them to work, because they're perfumers, they're working, giving them just a little bit of a leg up so that they could earn what they need for their parnasa. Right? These are not guys who are trying to make a killing. These are guys who are trying to make a parnasa. Guys, Talmidei Chachamim are trying to make a parnasa, support their families so they could devote themselves to learning. Enabling their learning benefits the community. And what benefits the community is never going to put any one individual at a disadvantage. Parnasa comes from the Ribono Shel Olam. So therefore, again, if we see that Talmidei Chachamim are coming to town, they need to sell their wares because they need to make a parnasa so they can devote themselves to learning. Because their learning ultimately, again, is going to help themselves, help the community. And as a community, we help them make their parnasa so they could devote themselves to their learning. We're not going to suffer for that. Parnasa comes from the Ribono Shel Olam. And if he sees that the community is trying to go ahead and help Torah, the Ribono Shel Olam is not going to put the rest of us at a disadvantage for that. An incredible yisod. So Mar goes weiter. Hano dikuloi ta'isi dikaloi lebavas. Well, it's an interesting case over here. There were these guys, basket salesmen, so out-of-town basket salesmen, who came to Bavel to sell their baskets. So the Gemara says, So what happened? Obviously, the local basket sellers, said no. right? What are you doing? You're from out of town. You can't hack your wares over here, right? Again, we're all for competition, but local competition. You can't come from out of town and open up and start selling your baskets. So also came to Ravina. They brought the case before Ravina. Amr lahu me'alma asu ula alma lizabnu. So Ravina says something very interesting. He said, Bavel, Rashi points out over here, La Amal Lisbon, Yomi the Shuka Hava, the Harbe Ban Mimakum Acher, Liknos Min Ashok, Lefichach, Ein Bnei Ha'ir Ma'akvin, Akam Ala Mokrim. So this is very interesting. So apparently these guys showed up on the market day. Now the market day in Bavel attracted a lot of consumers from outside of Bavel also. So Ravina said like this, just like people showing up today on the market day are from out of town, so too again, out of town merchants have the ability to sell as well. So this is interesting, right? Since the customers are from out of town, therefore again, Ravina said the suppliers could sell from out of town as well. But this is only on the marketplace day, right? Because on the market day, that's when you attract a lot of out of town commerce. Avavalo yom deshuka low. Again, on a non-market day, then the out-of-town basket salesman cannot sell their wares. So furthermore, even during the market day, you out-of-town salesman, you could sell in the market itself. The market itself. What can't you do? You can't go ahead and start going house to house. So limitations. So the Gemara tells another story. Hanoi Amoroi da'isi amro lepum nara. So I will say there were these guys. Amoroi are people who sell wool salesmen. So wool salesmen came to this place called Pum Nara. That was the name of the city. Asu b'nei Masa kama akvi alayu. The local residents, the local wool salesmen, right? They organized and they came and they stopped the out of town guys from selling wool. Asu l'chmei Rav Kana. They came for Rav Kana. Amar lehu dinahu dima akvi alaychu. So Rav Kana said, "Listen, they're right. You shouldn't be able to sell your wool." Amar le islan ashroi. This is interesting. So the out of town guy said like this. We have outstanding debts in this community. In other words, I will say, so just understand, in Pum Nara, they had previously sold wool to people in Pum Nara. People in Pum Nara owed them money. So the out-of-town merchants were here to collect their debts. So they said, so essentially what they said is like this. They said, we're here to collect our debts. We need to make some money while we're here, otherwise, again, we're gonna lose. So all we're looking to do is just go ahead and sell wool while we're here collecting our debts. We're not looking to do anything else. So therefore, again, he paskind. So we'll say, so he paskind before kind of paskind. Zilu zamnu shirchi yusaychu adak risu ashray didachol vaslisu. So Rav Kana said, fine, so you could sell wool for the duration that you are collecting your debt. But after that, you need to move on. Okay. Rav Dimi and Arda, Aisu Grogos, Rabbi said, this is an incredible case. Rav Dimi and Arda, incredible story. So Rav Dimi and Arda brought figs on a boat. So we'll say, so again, I just want to point out, so we'll say it's incredible, right? Think of this. This is Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi and Arda brought figs on a boat. Now we'll say, okay, why is he bringing figs on a boat? To sell them. So he's a fig salesman. So he's bringing figs on a boat. So he shows up. So Rav Dimi shows up at a foreign city, right, in the city of the Reish Kalusa, ready to sell his dates, his figs. Sorry. So the Reish Kalusa said to Rava, "Puk chazi itzur mirabananu nakit leishuka." So the Reish Kalusa said to Rava, do me a favor, go out. I've heard about this Rav Dimi, but investigate, is he a Talmud Chacham or not? If he is a Talmud Chacham, then literally again, naket leishuka means stop the marketplace. Now, stop the marketplace means give Rav Dimi first rights to sell his wares. Right? As a Talmud Chacham, this is the covenant we'll give him, let him sell his stuff. That way he can make his money, go back home, continue learning, and Shalom Yisrael. But again, the Reish Kalusa was saying, I've heard of him, but I don't really know about him. So Rava, you go and test him. He's a Talmud Chacham. So Rava said, this is incredible. So apparently Rava didn't have the opportunity to do this. So Rava said it to his own talmid, said to his students, Rava Baraba, Puk toile bekan kane. Literally again, go and smell his keg, right? His barrel. Now we'll say, what did that mean? If you had wine and you had a barrel, what would you do when you'd open up the lid? So you open up a bottle of wine, right? It's very pleasant to go ahead and smell the bottle or to smell the cork. So that's an expression. The expression is, you could use this, right? Go and smell the barrel. Go and smell the barrel is an expression that says, Go find out what kind of person this is, right? You could tell a lot about a wine just by opening the bottle and smelling it. You can smell it. You can smell if it turned, right? You can smell if it, right? You can smell the bouquet. You can smell so many different things. So it's interesting. So just the names over here are very important, right? So Rav Dimi is the person coming on the boat with the figs. The Reish Galusa says to Rava, go and see if he's a Talmud Chacham. If he's a Talmud Chacham, stop the marketplace and allow him to sell his wares. Rava apparently didn't have the ability to do this, says to his own talmid, Rav Ada Bar Abba, so Rav Ada, go and smell the barrel. Go and see if he's a Talmud Chacham. Fine. So now, Nafak Gaza, so what happens? So Rav Ada Bar Abba comes to Rav Dimi. Shalom Aleichem. He says, Baminei. This is interesting. Peel Shebalak Fifa Mitzvah. So he asks the following question. If an elephant goes ahead and swallows a reed basket, V'kia derech beis Aryeh, and then excretes it. Now the case over here is he swallows the barrel whole and he excretes it whole. Okay, not a pleasant day, right? So he swallows it whole and excretes it whole. So I'll say, so what's the shaila? Mahu. What's the status of the basket? Now, both say, now, what's the shaila over here? Right? So the shaila is like this: a reed basket, normally is mekabel tumah. Now, both say, generally, a utensil made out of excrement, what we call kli gilalim, is not mekabel tumah. See, here's the shaila: if an elephant goes ahead and swallows a reed basket whole and then excretes it whole, right? So you're looking at a reed basket after it's been excreted. Do we look at that as a reed basket and it's mekabel tumah? Or since it's gone through the elephant and been excreted by the elephant, it's now called kli gilalim, a utensil of excrement, and therefore not mekabel tumah. So the Gemara says, lo hava biyadei. So ultimately again, Rav Dimi did not know the answers. But I just want to tell you something. It's like, why this question, right? Like, in other words, out of all, obviously he's trying to test me as Talmud Chacham. So I say, I don't know, I was thinking a lot about this question, and I think that there is a tremendous, life question in this. So I say, what happens a lot in life is there are overwhelming circumstances that swallow us, chew us up, and spit us out. And the shaila is, are you able to maintain your sense of self and your identity, even after undergoing the difficulties and challenges of life? Man is often compared to a kli. Man is compared to a utensil. We have this imagery all of the time. And what happens in life? The elephants of life come along. And what do the elephants of life do? They swallow you up. We'll say all of us go through this. All of us go through this in life. They're just circumstances that totally swallow me up. And then afterwards, the circumstances are over, and they spit me back out. And the shaila is, am I the same kli, or have I become someone different? And again, being the same kli or becoming someone different, ultimately, there's not a right answer or a wrong answer to that. But often, after undergoing difficult circumstances, we look at ourselves and we wonder again, have we retained our sense of self, or have we become someone new? Right? Am I still the same kli that went into the elephant? And then again, I went through this whole elephant matzav, but now again, I've retained my sense of self. Or maybe I become someone new as a result of being swallowed up and spit back out. There's a profound, I don't think, out of all the different questions that Rav Ada could have asked Rav Dimi, of course he's asking him a halachic question, but I think in this question itself is a profound life yesod as well. Do you allow the circumstances of life? I will say, it is so easy to get derailed in life. So do you allow the circumstances of life to just go ahead, chew you up and spit you out, and now you have no semblance of your former self? Or are you strong enough to hold on to your sense of identity? Are you strong enough to hold on to your values? Are you strong enough to hold on to who and what you are? That no matter how big the elephant is, and no matter what it does to you while you're going through it, and no matter how it spits you out or excretes you out, you remain the same basket. You remain the same person. You remain committed to your ideas, to your ideals, and to your tenets. That's the shaila he was asking halachic shaila. But again, I don't think it's ever by accident. And again, I will say the answer to that question. So what does Rav Ada say? I don't know. Because we will say, especially if you analyze that question from the hashkafic perspective, it's a good question. I think sometimes one of the most overwhelming things in life is like when we look in the mirror, and we see the person looking back, and I realize that, wow, that's not the same person I used to be. Now, sometimes it's, wow, that's not the same person I used to be, and that's incredible, and that's beautiful. And sometimes it's like, wow, that's not the same person I used to be. I used to be someone filled with so many dreams and goals and aspirations. Someone who was on fire about Yiddishkeit. Someone who had such a level of commitment. And sometimes it ebbs and it wanes. And again, sometimes the person looking back it's not the same kli. It's not the same kli. And a lot of times the reason it's not the same kli is because of those life elephants. They chew you up, they spit you out, they excrete you out. And the shaila is, what happened to your basket? So Dimi simply says, I don't know. So as a result, we'll say, so now remember again, as a result of Rav Dimi not knowing, incredible. So Amalei, so Gemara says, so I'll be out there. Amalei, Mar Nihu Rava. So we'll say, so now Rav Dimi was a visitor. So he says to Rav Ada, he was impressed about Rav Ada's knowledge. He said, are you Rava? I've heard so much about Rava. Are you Rava? So Tavach le besandale. So we'll say, so Rav Ada Bar Ava tapped Rav Dimi on his sandal. It's like he took his staff and he tapped it on the sandal. So this was a little bit of like Rashi said, like a little bit of a condescending act. Amarle ben didi l'Rava ikatuva. So Ravada said, between me and my Rebbe Rava, there is a great distance. Mihu al karkach ana rabcha. But he says, so Rav Dimi essentially says, just like between me and my Rebbe Rava, Ravada said, the same way that between me and my Rebbe Rava, there's a lot of distance. Between me and you, right? Between me, Rav Ada, and between Rav Dimi, you, the visitor who's looking to sell your figs, there's a lot of distance as well. Ana Rabcha, I'm your Rebbe. In other words, this is Rav Ada saying to Rav Dimi, I am greater than you. V'Rabba, Rabcha de Rabach. And Rabba is the Rebbe of your Rebbe, which was another way of Rav Dimi essentially, Rav Ada essentially saying to Rav Dimi, you're not a talmid chacham. You're not a talmid chacham, and therefore, again, I will say, for our purposes over here, I'm not going to give you first rights of selling your grogros, of selling your figs in the marketplace. Incredible. So, naktale shuga. So, we'll say, as a result, they did not give Rav Dimi first rights in the marketplace. Now, as a result, pasak grogros didei. Rav Dimi's his figs spoiled. His figs spoiled, and he lost. He suffered a loss. Aslu kamid Rav Yosef. So Rav Dimi brought the case before Rav Yosef. Amalei chazi mar my avduli. So Rav Dimi said, look what they did to me. Look what they did to me. I brought my grogros. I'm a talmid chacham. I should have had first rights to sell my stuff in the marketplace. Look what they did. Amalei man de lo shahiyeh lo oniseh de malka de edom lo nishaye lo oniseh lo oniseh. So we'll say, so this is incredible. This is incredible. So remember again, they brought this before Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, Rav Dimi, I believe that you were profoundly wronged. You are profoundly wronged. And essentially, again, the God that saw the wrong visited upon the king of Edom, which we'll see in just a moment, who avenged the king of Edom, should avenge your embarrassment as well. So I'll say, so this is strong stuff. Dechsev ka'amar Hashem al shlosha pishei Moav al bar lo ashivenu al sarfo atzmos melech Edom l'sid. So I'll say, so ultimately, again, it's talking about the king of Edom was killed, and ultimately, again, his body cremated and his bones made into plaster. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to avenge the wrong done to the king of Edom. Now, this was the king of Edom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu avenges the wrong done to Edom. Of Alachas Kama V'Kama, he avenges the wrong done to Klal Yisrael. So we'll say, so what happened? As a result, get ready for this. Nach nafshei Rav Ada Bar Abba. Rav Ada Bar Abba died. So now remember again, Rav Ada Bar Abba was the one who came to test Rav Dimi, and essentially again it was a one-question test. What happens to the basket swallowed up by the elephant? Rav Dimi couldn't answer it. As a result, Rav Ada Bar Abba said, "You're not a talmid chacham." Went ahead, did not hold up, but again didn't just say he wasn't a talmid chacham. He dealt with him a little bit disparagingly. So I'll say, as a result of the embarrassment that Rav Ada Bar Abba visited upon Rav Dimi, Rav Ada Bar Abba died. Rav Ada Bar Abba died. Incredible. Now this is incredible. Now so now, after this happened, this obviously was very traumatic. So we'll say this is incredible. The following discussion is incredible. The following discussion is a discussion amongst the Rabbanim who is responsible for the death of Rav Ada Bar Abba. Rav Yosef Amra Ana Anishtei the Ana L'Taisei. So Rav Yosef said, I'm responsible because I'm the one who cursed them. Right? Rav Yosef says, I'm the one who gave the psak halacha that said, he who went ahead and embarrassed Rav Dimi ultimately, again, is going to get punished like the ones who humiliated the king of Edom. Rav Dimi Menarda Amar Ana Anishtei the Afsid Grogros Didi. Rav Dimi said no. Now Rav Dimi was the victim. Rav Dimi said it was my fault. It was my fault because the truth is I brought the din Torah. I should have just left it alone. Right? So again, I'm a visitor here. Rav Ada bar Ava is a local Talmid Chacham, the student of Rava. I should have just left it alone. Abaye said, Ana Anishtei, the Amrulu Rabbanon, Adigmarisu Garme Be'abaye Su Achlu Bisra Shmena Be'Rava. So Abaye said, I'm responsible because I used to say to the Rabbanim, instead of going ahead and eating a bone at the house of Abaye, let me come along, right? Go ahead and eat good meat at the house of Rava. I would continue to send talmidim ultimately again to Rava. Okay, Rava Amar Rava says, first of all, Girashi, Damalu Rabbanon Agdimrisu Gami Be'abai She'eragi Lomar Talmidim Acha'atem Hochem Eitz Abai Ligra Ligares Atzamos Kilomar Lomod Shelo Lusova Suachlu Bo V'Lamdu Hilchos Suvos Meravachas Eitz Rava. Okay, Rava Amar Rava said, first white line, Aniya Nishtei. Rava said, I am responsible. Tichiyava Azil Beit Tabcha LeMishkal Umsa Amrulu Tabache Ana Shakilna Bisra. So Rava said, ultimately again, I am responsible because ultimately again, when he would come to the butcher shop to go ahead and take meat. So ultimately, he would come before he would come to the butcher. He would say, I'm entitled to take before the attendant of Rava because I'm more important than him. Ana Nishtei, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Reish Kala. So listen to this. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, I am responsible for the death of Rav Ada. Why? So the Gemara says, Ana Nishtei, the Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Reish Kala Hava. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was the head of the Kala. Now the Kala was like the general shir that they would give before a Yom Tiv. Kol Yoma Mekame Dinei Lekala Marhit Badei Rav Ada bar Ava L'Shamasei V'Hadir Ayo Lekala. So what happened? Every day before Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak gave shir, so he would review it with Rav Ada bar Ava. He would review the whole shir with Rav Ada bar Ava, and then only afterwards would he go ahead and give the shir. Hahu Yoma Naktua Rav Papa of Rav Yeshua, Rav Ada bar Ava. We should lahava b'siyuma. So one day Rav Papa and Rav Huna stopped Rav Ada bar Ava because they were not at the conclusion of the previous shir. Right? Rashi points out the Learning Misachas Brachas. So again, they didn't hear the shir. They didn't hear Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, and so they wanted Rav Ada bar Ava to teach them the shir. So Amrulei Ema Lon Hani Shmaisisa de Meiser Behema. Go ahead and tell us the conclusion of the shir Meiser Behema. Hechi Amrinu. Hechi Amrinu Rava. Amar Lahu Hachi Amar Rava Hachi V'Hachi Amar Rava. So Rava said, Adahachi Nagale, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak v'lo asir Rav Ada bar Ava. So I say, Amrulei Rabbanon Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak kum diganalan. So I said at a certain point in time. So remember again. So they sit on Nachman bar Yitzchak. It's time to give shir. So just to clarify, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak would go ahead and review the shir before he gave it over with Rav Ada bar Ava. One day Rav Ada bar Ava got sidetracked and he was going ahead and teaching a previous shir to some of the other talmidim. So they said to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, "It's time to give shir. You have to give shir already. It's getting late." So the Gemara says, "Amar lehu yasvina v'kamintra la'arisei Rav Ada bar Ava." So Nachman bar Yitzchak said, if Rav Ada bar Ava is not here, something must have happened to him. Let's wait for his funeral beer to get here. Now, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was simply making a statement that is so strange that Rav Ada bar Ava is not here. He must have died. Now, he was just saying he must have died almost like as an expression. Right? Like, what happened to you? You know, he must have died. So I'll say, so what happened? So the Gemara says, Adahachi nafik kala dinach nafshed Rav Ada bar Ava. So ultimately, so sure enough, right after this, so the word came out that Rav Ada bar Ava had indeed passed away. So I'll say, Umistabra Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak anshe. And I'll say, it would appear that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak is really the one who was responsible for the death of Rav Ada bar Ava. So I'll say, what's going on over here? Now I'll say, now ultimately again, so what you see over here is a great Talmid Chacham died, a tragedy occurred. And what's fascinating about this machlok is all of these other Rabbanim trying to figure out who bears responsibility. So I will say it is such an incredible and tremendous yisod, because so often what we see, especially from contemporary leadership, is deflection of responsibility. There's so many lessons in leadership just in this one amid. What we see, I will say, is one of the primary pieces of leadership is ultimately assumption of responsibility. When something terrible happens on the leader's watch, the leader is responsible. Rav Ada bar Ava died, and apparently he died suddenly, and he died unexpectedly. So let's say there's a conversation amongst the rabbinic leadership. Who bears responsibility for that? And it's incredible. Each one of these great Rabbanim saying, it was me, it was me, it was me. So Gemara says at the end of the day, Mistabra, Reb Nachman Bar Yitzchak Anshe. That it's Reb Nachman Bar Yitzchak ultimately who is responsible. Now, why is Reb Nachman Bar Yitzchak? Now, obviously, when it says responsible, that's responsible in quotations. What does it mean that he's responsible? Ultimately, because he's the one who made the statement of Rav Ada bar Abba must have died, right? He's not here. He didn't show up. He must have died. So we've seen this many times. How the power of the word, the power of the words of Talmid Chacham, power of words in general, but Allah has kama v'kama all the more so. The power of the words of Talmid Chachamim is simply overwhelming. The ability of those very words, which often uttered even without intent, to create new realities. Incredible. I will say, new Mishnah. Misha haya koslo samach la kosa chavero. So I will say, listen to this. Reuven and Shimon are neighbors. So Reuven has a wall. And now Shimon has an adjoining wall. Lo yismoch lo kosa acher. So Shimon should not put up another wall next to Reuven's wall. Now we'll see the exact parameters of this case. Ela imkin hirchak mimeno arba amos. Unless, of course, Shimon goes ahead and distances his wall from Reuven's first wall at least dalet amos. Okay? Like I said, we'll see the parameters of that in just a little bit. Hachalonos bein milamala bein milamata may connect in arba amos. So we've seen this halacha before. Windows. Right, so again, if halacha l'maisa again, so let's say again, Reuven has a home that has windows. Shimon's building a wall. So if Shimon builds a wall, his wall has to be distanced dalet amos from the windows. Now, what does that mean? If the wall goes as high as the windows, the wall has to be dalet amos higher than the windows. If the wall goes beneath the windows, the wall has to be dalet amos lower than the windows. What's the logic? The logic is that halacha l'maisa, you don't want someone to be able to stand on the wall and be able to look into the windows themselves. Okay, says the Gemara, the Kama Helchi Samach. So we'll say, so it's interesting. It's interesting that the Gemara's Havamina over here is almost as if there was an original wall there, and the walls originally were within dalet amos of each other. Then maybe one wall fell down. Now you want to rebuild this. So how did you have it initially that you have two walls within dalet amos of each other? Rabbi Yehuda says this is what it means. Say Amud Beis. Haba lismoch lo yismoch ela imkein hirchek mimeno arba amos. And I will say that the idea over here is, if Reuven has a wall, and now Shimon wants to build a new wall, that Shimon can't build his new wall in close proximity to Reuven's original wall within dalet amos. It has to be dalet amos of space. I will say second line 22b. But it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like we're talking about a case of walls that already existed, to which the Gemara says, you're right. Rather, Rabbi says, what's the case? This is what it means to say, if Reuven had a wall, right, Shimon had a wall that was close to Reuven's wall, so the Gemara said, arba amos, but again, Baruch Hashem, the walls were built in conformance with halacha, which means that there were dalet amos in between Reuven's wall and Shimon's wall, v'nafal, and ultimately again, and Reuven's wall, or we'll call it Shimon's wall, fell down, lo yismach lo kosel acher, ela imkein herchek mimeno dalet amos. Ultimately, again, Shimon can't rebuild his wall unless he goes ahead and he places a distance of dalet amos. Therefore, we'll say, the way the Gemara is framing the case is like this. Reuven and Shimon have two parallel walls. The walls are built ka'alacha, meaning with dalet amos, at least a minimum of dalet amos of space in between them. Then what happens? Shimon's wall falls down. Now Shimon wants to rebuild his wall. So what's the halacha? I will say, what's the halacha? The halacha is that Shimon can rebuild his wall, but he must maintain a distance of dalet amos. That's the halacha in the Gemara. That's the halacha in the Mishnah. Now the Gemara says, by the way, my time, why do you need dalet amos of space in between two walls? This is very interesting. The Gemara says, the dav shadahacha ma'ale lahasam. So let's take a look at Rashi. What does this mean? The dav shadahacha, literally again, the pedestrian traffic of here is beneficial to there. What does that mean? Look at Rashi. Rashi's 3 lines down from the top. Mashadashin beregal bein shnei aksalim tamid moel l'shnei aksalim lahakshos hakarkois yisodos aksalim v'lo yimutu. So this is very interesting. Constant pedestrian traffic benefits the walls. In other words, the more pedestrian traffic you have in close proximity to a wall, the more it solidifies the ground around the wall, and again, solidifies the foundation of the wall. Now here's what's interesting. So if you have two walls, if there's dalet amos of space, people will walk in that area. So because they'll walk in that area, it's a benefit to both walls. Less than Dalet Amas of space, people will not walk in between those two areas. And therefore, again, the walls will not be as solidified. That's why, again, when erecting a parallel wall, you must distance the second wall from the first, at least Dalet Amas, ensuring that people will walk back and forth between these walls, benefiting both of the walls. Incredible. Amar Rav. So Rav says, by the way, just qualification of that, that's only, by the way, by a wall of a garden. Let's say, because what's the chap with the wall of a garden? Wall of a garden is people are only going to walk on one side of the wall, not the other side. In other words, what we'll call the interior side, which faces the garden, people aren't going to walk there. So they're only walking on one side. So therefore, again, you want people to dafka walk there in order to solidify the wall. However, but if it's the wall of a chatzar, so we'll say what's here in the wall of a chatzar, people will be walking on both sides of the wall in balismach somik. So this is very interesting. So let's say, so the halacha that says that if I'm erecting a parallel wall, I have to leave at least Dalet Amas between the first wall and the second wall, that's only the wall of a garden, where people are only walking on one side of that wall. So therefore, again, I need pedestrian traffic. But let's say on the wall of a chatzar, where people are walking on both sides of the wall, then I could even go ahead and erect the parallel wall, even in close Dalet Amas. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. Apparently, you don't need pedestrian traffic on both sides of the wall. You only need it on one side of the wall to like compact and solidify the ground. So essentially, as long as you're getting pedestrian traffic on one side of that wall, you're good to go. So in a gina, in a garden, you're only getting pedestrian traffic, we'll call it on the exterior side of the wall, not in the interior, because people aren't walking in the garden. That's why you have to distance in Dalet Amas. But in a chatzar where you're getting pedestrian traffic on both sides of that wall, ultimately, again, there's not a problem. Rabbi Roshia says, no, echad kosa gina v'echad kosa chatzar. So Roshia says as follows, that whether you're talking about the wall of a gina, right, the wall of a garden, or the wall of a chatzar, imba lismoch eno somech. Ultimately, again, halacha l'maisa, either way, you always have to maintain Dalet Amas. So we'll say, Rabbi Moshe is of the opinion that halacha said this is a blanket halacha, right? That whenever building a parallel wall, you need Dalet Amas of space. They might also be talking about two different situations. One could be talking about what we call an old city, and one is a new city. Meaning what? So I will say in an old city where you've already had a lot of pedestrian traffic, okay, so the walls are solidified. A newer city where, again, you don't have the pedestrian traffic, perhaps that's where we're going to be a little bit more makbid on the space of the wall. Okay, incredible. So I will say, so now at least we understand the concept of why when erecting a new wall, you have to go ahead and leave Dalet Amas of space. Incredible. So Tanan. So also we learn Hachalonos bein milamalan bein milamaton bein mikinegdon arba amos. So let's say, remember again, if I'm building a wall, and let's say again, my wall is next to Ruvain's house, and Ruvain has windows. So what's the halacha? So again, I have to make sure that, again, if I'm building a wall as tall as his windows, I have to build it Dalet Amas higher. If I'm building it below his windows, Dalet Amas lower. And now again, the Gemara also added in bein mikinegdon. Now mikinegdon also sounds like what? I need to distance my wall Dalet Amas just from his window. So the Gemara says, V'tani Allah, we learned about this, we explained about this. Milamalon kadesh lo yatzitz vira. So also we learned this. So again, in terms of if the wall is high, I have to make it Dalet Amas higher in order that I'm not able to stand on top of the wall, look into his windows. Milamatan shlo yama vira. Same idea. If it's lower, I have to make it Dalet Amas lower so that I can't stand on the wall and look in. The Gemara says, Umi kenegdan shlo yafil. And I need also distance. I need distance of Dalet Amas opposite the windows. Why? So that again, it shouldn't block out all the light. Right? Again, remember, if the wall is right up against the windows, then halacha l'maisa that blocks out the light. So, in order not to block out the light, I need distance of Dalet Amas. Taima shalo yakil. Now, the reason is that I don't want to block out the light. Ava mishum dov shalo. But interestingly enough, there does not seem to be any discussion regarding pedestrian traffic. To which the Gemara says, what's the case over here? Beba min hatzad. We're talking about a perpendicular wall. So I'll say, so in a perpendicular wall, where really, again, the wall is only hitting what we'll call the house area in a very small part. We're not worried about pedestrian traffic for that small part of the wall. The Kama, and we'll say, how large of an area we're talking about? Amar Yeva Chamua Da'ashin Bar Nidbach. Literally, again, the width bar nidvach literally means, again, the amount between windows. Rashi says over here. Fine. So Mishmei derav kimali rochav chalon. The entire width of a window, which is a tefach. But 1 second, I will say, don't you run into an issue that then one can stand on top of the window and look into their fellow's house? This is an interesting case where the wall itself is sloped. In its perpendicular area where it hits the house, or it's right next to the house, it slopes down. So because it slopes down, no one could stand on it. So because no one could stand on it, there's no fear of looking into Ruvain's house. So I have arba amos, but 1 second. But we spoke about the idea that you need dalet amos in between a wall and a home. So the Gemara says, lo kasha kan meruach achas kan mishnei ruchos. One is talking about, again, I will say, where you have a wall from one direction, and one is talking about where you have a wall from two directions. Look at Rashi. Shtei ruchos, shnei ksalim zeh keneged zeh, mishnei tzidei hachalon. Ultimately, again, where you essentially have two perpendicular walls coming from two different directions. Okay, so Tashma. V'es hakosel min hamaschila dalet amos. This is actually interesting. So halacha ma'isa, you have to distance the wall. You have to distance the wall from the gutter. So now imagine for just a moment, Reuven has a house. The house has a gutter, right? Gutter at the edge of the roof. So now again, I'm building a wall. So now the Gemara says, you have to distance the wall from the gutter, dalet amos. Now, why use that? Because what do gutters need? It's not a new dynamic. You have to clean out your gutters. So how do you clean out your gutters? You take a ladder and you climb up. So remember again, if the wall is too close to the gutter, then there's no way to get in to clean the gutters. So you have to distance a wall at least dalet amos from the gutter in order to be able to put up a ladder and get up there and clean it out. Now, the reason is because I have to be able to get a ladder up there. I will say, but apparently because of pedestrian traffic, it's not a problem. I will say, we're just trying to figure out. So just understand what's happening over here. I'm sorry, we're going a little quickly, but just understand what's happening over here, which is that halacha l'maisa. We're trying to figure out. The Gemara tells me this halacha, and it's halacha psuka, which is it's just like a straight across the board halacha, which is that halacha l'maisa. If you're building a wall opposite someone's home, or opposite someone's, or for that matter, opposite someone's wall. If I'm building a second wall opposite someone's pre-existing wall, or I'm building a wall opposite someone's house, it requires dalet amos. Why dalet amos? To which the Gemara says mishum davsha. So the answer the Gemara gave was because in order to allow pedestrian traffic, because that's a benefit to the walls. You want people walking there. If the area is too narrow, people aren't going to walk there, and therefore the wall, the ground around the wall doesn't become compacted, and therefore the wall is not as solidified. So you want pedestrian traffic around there. The Gemara then tries trying to figure out. Now again, what type of wall that applies to a garden wall, a chutzner wall? Okay, so that's all discussion. Now the Gemara is just pointing out over here, as the Gemara also says that you have to distance your wall from the gutter. Dalet amos. Why? In order that you have space for the ladder. Now again, shouldn't it say you have to go ahead and distance your wall from the gutter? Why? Mishum davsha, pedestrian traffic. Why does it say because of the ladder to the gutter? What's going on over here? So it says, Mishum sulam. The reason I have to distance it ultimately is because in order to be able to get a ladder up there. Ava mishum davshalo. But ultimately, again, because of pedestrian traffic, it's not a problem. So we'll say, so what's going on up here? Hachama what's the case? B'maschila mishupas. We're talking about a slanted gutter. So we'll say essentially what this is like this. There are two different ways you could have a gutter. You could have a gutter that literally hugs the edge of the house, or you could have a slanted roof, right? And at the end of the slanted roof, ultimately there's a gutter. Now the chap over here is the way the slanted roof is, it's a slanted roof that's an overhang. So you have the structure, the house, you have a roof. We have a roof that has like an overhang, so an area underneath the roof that you could stand. And the gutter is at the edge of the roof itself. Now watch this. The Gemara says, the imishum davsha So it says, here's what's interesting. We're not worried about pedestrian traffic. Now, why are we not worried about pedestrian traffic? Why not? Because halacha l'maisa, people are going to be walking in close proximity to the wall anyway. Why? Because they can walk underneath the overhang of the house, right? Especially when it's raining, right? So they can walk underneath the overhang of the house. So because they could walk underneath that overhang, therefore halacha l'maisa, Davsha is already taken care of. So now that the Davsha is taken care of, the only thing outlying is what? Is ladder. So again, because of pedestrian traffic, we're not talking about a case where the house abuts the wall. There's an overhang, and under the overhang they could walk. So Davsha is already taken. You have pedestrian traffic. And so now that I have pedestrian traffic, the Gemara says, by the way, in addition, you also need to make sure that you have Dalar Amas from the gutter. From the gutter. Why? Because gutter maintenance, you need to be able to get a ladder in there ultimately in order to be able to maintain the gutter. I will say, Shkoyach. Stop over for today. Great.